you'll meet a vampire, you'll be next. I love horror books, I love horror films, I love everything that has something to do with horror. The Southern Vampire Mysteries series. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel Yume Reads, and I am Yume. In this video, I will be telling about the books that I've got thrifted. So all the books that I've got are used books. So let's begin. The first book is Green Tea and Other Ghost Stories by Sheridan Le Fanu. Sheridan Le Fanu was an Irish writer, and he is mainly famous for his ghostly tales and horror fiction. His best work is Carmilla, which was published in 1872, and that work has also inspired Dracula, which was written by Bram Stoker. Should read that book as well, but I couldn't find Carmilla, so I got this one. So this book has 4 tales. The back says, regarded as the Victorian era's greatest writer of ghost stories, Sheridan Le Fanu gave expression to the fears and dread that often haunt sensitive individuals. This collection has 4 finest ghost stories. The first one is the title story, that is Green Tea, and it offers a petrifying account of an English cleric's bouts with a malignant spectral presence. The second story is Squire Toby's Will, which recounts sibling rivalry and disputed inheritance. The third one is The Fortunes of Sir Robert Erdag, concerns a country gentleman's mysterious relationship with a sinister valet. And the fourth one, the last one, is Sir Dominic's Bargain, which presents Le Fanu's masterly variation on the theme of a pact with the devil, just like Dr. Faustus. The second book is Lord Jim by Joseph Conrad. Joseph Conrad was a Polish British writer and is mainly famous for his novella Heart of Darkness, which was published in 1902. But Lord Jim was published before that. It was published in 1900. So it is widely regarded as one of the greatest novels of the 20th century. Its central message about the consequences of straying from personal responsibility and ethical integrity is as powerful today as it was over 100 years ago. Mainly, Conrad's works depict life at sea. So, in a split-second impulse of self-preservation, a young ship's officer abandons his imperiled vessel and its passengers. He survives, but suffers a wretched existence. He must go forward, facing the scorn of the world and his own guilt as he seeks atonement for the dishonorable choice he made. The author's deep moral consciousness and skillful narrative style are fully revealed in this unforgettable story. So it reminds me of the Rime of Ancient Mariner, which was written by Coleridge. In that also, the ancient mariner survives while rest of the sailors were died. So, second. The third book is The Red and the Black by Stendhal. Stendhal is the pen name of Mary Henry Bale, and he was a French writer. So he's mainly known for this book, which is Le Rouge et le Noir. I know French, little bit. A landmark in the development of the modern novel and a classic of French literature, Red and the Black chronicles a young man's struggles with the dualities of his nature. Julien Sorel, a young dreamer from the provinces whose imagination is afire with Napoleonic ideals, sets off to make his fortune. His encounters and experiences along the way incite constant inner conflict, drawing him back and forth between sincerity and hypocrisy, idealism, cynicism, humility, pride, love, and ambition. Next book is Young Goodman Brown and Other Short Stories by Nathaniel Hawthorne. Nathaniel Hawthorne was an American novelist, and his work, The Scarlet Letter, was a masterpiece which was published in 1850. And that book is set in 17th century Puritan New England. If you want to appreciate words, sentences, if you want to enjoy language, read him. So richly varied literary career, Nathaniel Hawthorne wrote compelling short stories of enduring appeal. His first important publication long before The Scarlet Letter was the 1837 collection Twice Told Tales, which brought the New England writer immediate fame and high praise from no less an authority than Edgar Allan Poe. Another compilation, Mosses from an Old Man's, followed in 1846 and achieved further success. So, out of 7 short stories, I have read 3. I read 3 short stories. 4 are remaining. So, I will read them soon. Don't forget to subscribe, otherwise you won't know. Next is Ethan Frome by Edith Wharton. She was also an American novelist, and she is mainly known for her 2 novels, The Age of Innocence and The House of Mirth. But I couldn't find either of them, and I got this one, Ethan Frome. It is also a famous novella by her, and the back says perhaps the best known and most popular of Edith Wharton's novels. Ethan Frome is widely considered her masterpiece. Set against a bleak New England background, the novel tells of Frome, his ailing wife Zena, and her companion Mattie Silver, superbly delineating the characters of each as they are drawn relentlessly into a deep-rooted domestic struggle. Burdened by poverty and spiritually dulled by a loveless marriage to an older woman, Frome is emotionally stirred by the arrival of a youthful cousin who is employed as household help. Mattie's presence not only brightens a gloomy house but stirs long dormant feelings in Ethan. Their growing love for one another, discovered by an embittered wife, presages an ending to this grim tale that is both shocking and savagely ironic. So it's kind of domestic fiction, I guess. Next book is The Good Soldier by Ford Madox Ford. Ford Madox Ford was an English writer, and he was also an editor of the English Review journal or magazine journal. So this book was published in 1915, and it says Leonora and Edward Ashburnham were good people from England, as John Dowell, who is the narrator of this tale, explains, and Dowell and his wife Florence Leisured, Americans of solid stock, were like their English friends, a model couple. For a dozen years, the foursome cultivated and maintained a friendship reinforced with yearly meetings at a fashionable German health resort, which Dowell visited with his ailing wife, and the Ashburnhams traveled to because of Edward's heart problem. Their marriages seemed exemplary studies of permanence, stability, and tranquility. That is until the day Dowell learned that for the previous 9 years his wife had been the mistress of his friend Captain Ashburnham, the apparently honorable good soldier. Oh, it would be interesting to know. Next is Elizabeth Gaskell's Cranford. Mrs. Gaskell is mainly known for her book North and South and Mary Baton, which is Baton, I don't know. Mary Baton, which was her debut novel. And again, I couldn't find both of the novels, so I got Cranford. So it is a sensitive and moving portrait of a Victorian town captured at a transitional period in English society. Cranford first appeared serially in Charles Dickens' magazine Household Words from 1851 to 53 and in book form in 1853. So Mrs. Gaskell situated her stories in a hamlet very like the one in which she grew up, and her affectionate but unsentimental portraits of the residents of Cranford offer a realistic view of life and manners in an English country village during the 1830s. So this book recounts the events and activities in the lives of a group of spinsters and widows who struggle in genteel poverty to maintain their standards of propriety, decency, and kindness. Tales of the heroism and self-sacrifice of Captain Brown, the surprising betrothal of Lady Glanmire, and the future of a pretty but poor Miss Jessie support a web of subtle but serious themes. I'm tired. Blah blah blah. The separate spheres and blah blah blah, and the curious coexistence of customs, old and new, in a changing society. So this book is a social novel. Next book is Of Human Bondage by William Somerset Maugham, and he was an English novelist, and his works provide an understanding of human nature. It was published in 1915. The same year, The Good Soldier was published. Okay. Desperate for love and eager for experience of a wider world, Philip Carey grows up in the oppressive confines of his uncle's vicarage. The sensitive orphan is burdened by a clubfoot that sets him apart from his schoolmates and heightens his loneliness. Seeking passion and inspiration, he pursues his dreams of becoming an artist in Heidelberg and Paris, but returns to London humbled by his own mediocrity. But Philip's degradation has only just begun, as an obsession with a vulgar, cold-hearted waitress threatens to destroy what remains of his idealism. So, like the protagonist's physical deformity, Mom's homosexuality was a constant source of anxiety, alienation, and shame. He termed his masterpiece not an autobiography, but an autobiographical novel. Fact and fiction are inexorably mingled, and the emotions are my own. He said these words. So, this is semi-autobiographical novel. Next is Uncle Tom's Cabin by Harriet Beecher Stowe, who was an American novelist, and she was an abolitionist also, because she worked for the rights of slaves. And this book, it was published in 1852, and it is powerful abolitionist novel fueled the fire of the human rights debate. Denouncing the institution of slavery in dramatic terms, the incendiary novel quickly draws the reader into the world of slaves and their masters. Her characters are powerfully and humanly realized in Uncle Tom, a majestic and heroic slave whose faith and dignity are never corrupted. Eliza and her husband, George, who elude slave catchers and eventually flee a country that condones slavery. Simon Legree, a brutal plantation owner, little Eva, who suffers emotionally and physically from the suffering of slaves, and fun-loving Topsy, Eva's slave playmate. Critique scholars and students are today revisiting this monumental work with a new objectivity, focusing on Stowe's compelling portrayal of women and the novel's theological underpinnings. So, Uncle Tom's Cabin, ladies and gentlemen. The next book is The Ambassadors by Henry James. Henry James was an American British novelist, and he is widely known for his work The Turn of the Screw, which I have already read, and I have already read his Daisy Miller. I have liked Turn of the Screw very much because it will make you think whether there is a spirit in the novel or not. But good book, scary book, which will bring horror in your life. Although I don't like horrors in my life, but I love horror books. I love horror films. I love everything that has something to do with horror. Okay. So, about this book, Live All You Can, It's a Mistake Not To, declares the primary ambassador of the 1903 novel, adding it doesn't so much matter what you do in particular, so long as you have your life. If you haven't had that, what have you had? My question for you. In this complex tale of self-discovery, Henry James invokes his favorite theme, the clash of American innocence with European experience. It traces the path of an aging idealist, Lambert Strather, who arrives in Paris intending to persuade his young charge to abandon an obsession with a French woman. Why all the books are about obsession with a woman, and return home. Once abroad, however, Strather arrives at unexpected conclusions. So this is The Ambassadors by Henry James. Now we'll talk about other books. The next book is the Southern Vampire Mysteries series. This is Dead Until Dark. This is the first book in the series, and the author is Charlene Harris, who is an American author. And this entire series is about vampires, and I am a sucker for vampire stories. About this book, it was published in 2001. That means it was way before Twilight series was published. That was in 2005, and this was published in 2001. So Suki Steakhouse is a small-time cocktail waitress in small town Louisiana. She's quiet, keeps to herself, and doesn't get out much. Not because she's not pretty. She is. It's just that, well, Suki has this sort of disability. What sort of, you may ask? She can read minds. And that doesn't make her too dateable. And then along comes Bill. What is his name, Bill? Name him Edward. And then along comes Bill. He's tall, dark, and handsome, and Suki can't hear a word he's thinking. Obviously, he's a vampire. How would she? He's exactly the type of guy she's been waiting for all her life. But Bill has a disability of his own. He's a vampire. Yes, I can understand this is a disability. You are a vampire, but how it can be a disability if you can read minds, you have telepathic skills? That is power. I want that power. I want that disability. Worse than that, he hangs with a seriously creepy crowd with a reputation for trouble of the murderous kind. Now, this is not the spoilers, you guys. This is written in the synopsis. And when one of Suki's colleagues is killed, she begins to fear she'll be next. Obviously, if you'll meet a vampire, you'll be next. Don't take my name in front of that vampire. Don't tell him I told you. The second book in the series is Living Dead in Dallas. I do not have the entire series, but I have the first and second part of this series by Charlene Harris. In this one, Suki Steakhouse likes living in Bontemps, Louisiana, and she likes working as a cocktail waitress. We know, at Merlot's. But she's having a streak of bad luck. First, her co-worker is killed and no one seems to care. Humanity. You guys, humanity. Then she comes face to face with a beastly creature which gives her a painful and poisonous lashing. Enter the vampires, who graciously suck the poison from her veins like they didn't enjoy it. What is going on? The point is, the vampire saved her life, so when one of the bloodsuckers asks for a favor, she obliges, and soon Suki's and Dallas, using her telepathic skills to search for a missing vampire. She's supposed to interview certain humans involved, but she makes one condition: the vampires must promise to behave and let the humans go unharmed. Like that is possible, yeah. But that's easier said than done, and all it takes is one delicious plant and one small mistake for things to turn deadly. I told ya. Now, next book is Jon Ronson's So You've Been Publicly Shamed. Ashamed or shamed? Is a British journalist, and this book is about public shaming. So it includes investigative journalism. And it is a non-fiction. I generally do not read non-fiction or self-help book, but sometimes it is fine. You should read them to gain information, knowledge about other things which you might need in the future. So it's about public shaming. When Jon Ronson noticed a great renaissance of public shaming sweeping Ireland, he decided to investigate. At first, it seemed like the democratization of justice. The silent majority were getting a voice, but what did we do with it? Jon Ronson traveled the world meeting the subjects of high-profile public shamings. They are mostly like us, people who, say, made a bad joke on social media, but when their transgression is revealed, collective outrage circles with hurricane force, and they are torn apart, demonized, sometimes even fired from their job. Do they deserve it? Are our actions justified? Or are we using shame as a form of social control? So, shame and social control, two of the topics, interrelated. Reading this will be interesting. The next book is Shiver by Maggie Stiefvater, and this author, she's an American author, and she is mainly known for the Raven Cycle series. Even this book, Shiver, this is the first book in the Worlds of Mercy Falls series, and is an young adult fiction with romance and fantasy. Back says, a chilling love story that will have you hooked from the very first page. When a local boy is killed by wolves, Grace's small town becomes a place of fear. But Grace is fascinated by the pack and finds herself inexplicably drawn to a yellow-eyed wolf. There is something about him, something almost human. Then she meets a yellow-eyed boy whose familiarity takes her breath away, full of deliciously illicit, star-crossed love. So it is a chilling tale of werewolf and first love. Shiver. So the next book is The Night Watchman by Louise Erdrich, and this book is the winner of the Pulitzer Prize for Fiction in 2021. Louise Erdrich, she is a Native American author. Why Native American? Because she writes about, as well as she is from the indigenous peoples of the Americas. And it is 1953 in rural North Dakota. Thomas Wajusk is the night watchman at the first factory to open near the Turtle Mountain Reservation. He is also a prominent Chippewa council member and deeply troubled by the US government's proposed new emancipation bill. Far from offering the Chippewa more freedom, it is a betrayal threatening the rights of Native Americans to their land, their very identity. Pixie Petrus Parento works at the same factory, earning barely enough to support her mother and brother, let alone her alcoholic father, who sometimes returns her home to bully her for money. But Petrus, needs every penny to save if she's ever going to get to Minnesota to find her missing sister Vera. The Night Watchman. The next book is Outlander by Diana Gabaldon. So, this is the first book in the Outlander series, and Diana Gabaldon is an American author. She's very famous for this series, and I have always wanted to read this book, and I finally got this book. So, about this book, it is a historical fantasy novel, and the back says, "What if your future was the past?" 1946, Claire Randall goes to the Scottish Highlands with her husband Frank. It is a second honeymoon, a chance to learn how war has changed them and to re-establish their loving marriage. But one afternoon, Claire walks through a circle of standing stones and vanishes into 1743, like almost 203 years back. I also want to time travel, where the first person she meets is a British Army officer, her husband's 6 times great-grandfather. Unfortunately, Black Jack Randall is not the man his descendant is, and while trying to escape him, Claire falls into the hands of a gang of Scottish outlaws and finds herself a Sassenach, an outlander in danger from both Jacobites and Redcoats. Marooned amid danger, passion, and violence, her only chance of safety lies in Jamie Fraser, a gallant young Scots warrior. What begins in compulsion becomes urgent need, and Claire finds herself torn between two very different men and two irreconcilable lives. So, these are the books I got for myself. Thank you for watching this video. I will see you in the next video. Till then, take care of yourself. Bye.